What is that? I should be off.
Why is Chuck though? Chuck Anderson on. He's asking, but he doesn't. You got Chuck Anderson from home.
Maybe.
But he's on his cell phone, so that doesn't matter.
I'm there.
Oh, there you are. Oh.
I am here. It said that I was muted by the host, so I just kept my mouth shut.
Oh.
Morning. Call the Land Use and Information Committee meeting to order, May 4th, 2021. Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84, Open Meeting Law. First on the agenda is public comments. Don Hamilton, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I live at 7158 South Devils Lake Drive, and I'd like to thank the committee for their service to the people of Burnett County. Your commitment to balancing land uses that comply with Chapter 30 in the comprehensive land use plans of the county, village, and towns is noteworthy and appreciated. There's an interesting quote in the Burnett County Comprehensive Plan in Chapter 7.3, and I quote, "One of the ongoing land use challenges all Wisconsin counties face is how to maintain a positive relationship between the county and the towns, especially with regard to land use decisions," unquote. To do that, a multi-jurisdictional process to gather town and village feedback on land uses was written into the county and town plans. As a volunteer member who participated in the recent update to Oakland's comprehensive land use plan, I'm proud of the high priority Burnett County, Oakland, and the Webster plans place on, and they advocate for a land use decision-making process that encourages cooperation between the county and its villages and towns. By adopting the comprehensive plan as Section 30-5 of our land use ordinance, the county is a model for writing ordinances that are not only consistent with the plan, you also encourage input and cooperation. Last month, your leadership was on full display when you considered and evaluated the compatibility of a CUP against the land use desires of the county and the Webster comprehensive plans to reach a decision. Your committee's willingness to fairly evaluate applications against multiple plans and the approval criteria in Chapter 30 promotes consistency and minimizes land use conflict. Your actions demonstrate the high value and respect your committee places on Chapter 30 and the land use plans. Although the plans sometimes result in a lot more feedback for you to consider and maybe perhaps longer meetings than we would all prefer, in my eyes, it's exactly the type of feedback that improves the intergovernmental relations between the village, towns, and Burnett County. I want you to know the people appreciate the time you folks take to do this. Today, I look forward to the multi-jurisdictional decision-making effort to continue, and I would like to thank you and the committee, Mr. Chair, in advance for considering the formal analysis and letters received from the citizens, from Webster, from Meenan, and the town of Oakland about how a proposed CUP is or is not compatible with the desired or undesired land uses contained in their respective plans and ordinances. Thank you for your time, and again, I thank you for your service. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton. Next, we have approval of the agenda order.
I'll approve the agenda order.
Motion by Mr. Pearson,
Second.
second by Mr. Ah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Approval of the minutes from the April 6th, 2021 meeting.
Motion to approve the minute.
Motion by Mr. Blomberg,
Supervisor Conroy, second.
Supervisor Conroy, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we'll have Jason read the public hearing notices.
Notice of public hearing in the state of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, May 4th, 2021, at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center, Room 165, Town of Meaden, Severn, Wisconsin, regarding the following. Burnett County Land Use Shoreline Protection Ordinances, Map Amendment, MAP 2106, Erickson, to rezone the southeast quarter, the northeast quarter located in Section 15, Town 39 North, Range 17 West, Town of Lincoln, from A2 Ag Residential to RR3 Residential Recreation Zoning District. Zoning change requested by Kenneth Erickson. Details of proposed revision are available at the Burnett County Land Service Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and on the Burnett County website. Conditional use permit CUP 2107, Sheri LLC. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Oakland, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Will Jansen and John Jacobs representing Sheri LLC, doing business as DuForest Campground, has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to increase the size of the decks, patios, screen porches, sheds in the existing campground up to a maximum total of 288 square feet for all decks, patios, screen porches for each campsite, and up to a maximum total of 120 square feet for all sheds for each campsite. This would apply to all 135 campsites located at 29221 Hayden Lake Road Extension on the Yellow River, aka Danbury Flowage, in the RR3 zoning district, Lot 1, CSM, Volume 27, page 306, in the southeast quarter, the southwest quarter, in the southwest quarter, the southwest quarter is Section 5, in the southeast quarter of Section 6, Town 40 North, Range 16 West. Conditional use permit CUP 2108, Chelmo. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the towns of Meaden and Oakland, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Daniel Chelmo has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to construct a 60-unit campground located at 7162 South Devil's Lake Drive in the RR1 and A2 zoning districts, in the northeast quarter, the northwest quarter, and Government Lot 1 of Section 4, Township 39 North, Range 16 West, and Government Lot 4 of Section 33, Town 40 North, Range 16 West.
Thank you, Jason. On the first one, we have a rezone request, map 21-06, Erickson, rezone from A2 to RR3. Is Maria on the phone? Maria Erickson?
Hello, can you hear me?
Explain the application.
Okay, so what we're asking for is pretty straightforward, as it says. We've got some property off of Toma Road in Lincoln Township, and we're in planning for the possibility of a future sale. We don't have any plans yet. We'd like to keep as much acreage as we can and separate those dwellings that are existing on the property into, specifically 5-acre parcels.
And this is Mark Crozy from Wagner Surveying speaking. And we've been to the town meeting and so forth, and we discussed the future plan with the existing one, and that seems to be where the issues are out there. Ken had put buildings on the property and has been developed it as residential area. It is on a blacktop road with power on both sides available, and it is in A2 zoning district right now, and so asking for a one size smaller going to RR3 was what the request was. We thought it was a reasonable request. And then we looked at the future plan for the town of Lincoln and discussed it at length with them, as they had just made the small tracks along Blackbrook Road and Latka Road and not along Tomo Road. And it didn't match in with their future planning, even though this is only one bump district compared to the forestry districts along Blackbrook Road that were recently rezoned to smaller lots. And so we thought this is a reasonable request. There's a 40 north and a 140 south are both smaller lots required or requested or acceptable. And so we thought this was consistent with the area out there and a good use out there for the land. And so that's why the request was made.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Maria. This time I'll open the public hearing. Are there any public that wish to make comments on this CP? There are none. Have we received anything?
You have, we received a letter from the town of Lincoln. I think I emailed all that to you. That was yesterday, kind of late, saying they don't approve of the request.
Hey, we'll close the public hearing at this time. Are there any comments from the committee?
Supervisor Conroy? Yeah, when I read the minutes of the town of Lincoln special meeting called to discuss that request, and they moved to not support the request. It's a non-shoreland area, so the town does in fact have the final say on this change of zoning. And I'm looking at that location of the manufactured home on just barely across the line on the south edge of that 20-acre parcel dividing line. It seems to me that within our A2 district, using the total density number type of issue, a parcel can be created to cure that. It does not have to use the south line of the 20 as the boundary. Correct, Jason? It could supersede and certified survey map could cross the 20 boundary and create a third parcel.
Well, even the 20 can be divided into two parcels since it's A2.
It looks to me, looking at the sanitary report and whatnot, that the drain field is long and thin, and if it's, as Mr. Lefebvre said, as per the plan, it looks like that extends quite a ways south into that southern half of the previous 40.
Yeah, then you could do the density development provision to make have a little bit of flexibility there with adjusting the line.
But what I was getting at too is the 20 line. You know, that was a 40 split into 220s or whatever. That line is not sacrosanct in any way. It can be superseded by a certified survey map that crosses and gets a new legal description. Could lie in both parcels. So I don't believe we could approve it in the face of the town of Lincoln's denial anyway. But it is not an insolvable problem as A2. This results in less total parcels, of course.
Any other comments from the committee? No other comment. Mr. Allen.
I move to deny because of the
Town of Lincoln.
The town of Lincoln has sent us a letter saying they will refuse. So it's a moot point there.
Motion by Mr. Allen to deny. Is there a second?
Supervisor Conroy, I'll second the motion.
Second by Mr. Conroy. We'll have roll call vote on denial. Mr. Pearson.
I vote yes to deny.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Ah.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. rezone request. Erickson has been denied. Next, we'll move on to conditional use permit CUP 21-07. Arlette. Increased size accessory structure in camp. Is Mr. Jansen on?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead and explain.
DeForest Campground was acquired by Sheri in 2019 with pre-existing decks, patios, screen porches, and sheds that had not been permitted. As part of CUP 1921 DeForest Campground expansion, one of the conditions was to apply for another CUP requesting to increase the allowable size of storage sheds, decks, patios, and screen porches. Per Burnett County Code 30-543, standards are set at 100 square feet for storage structures and 200 square feet for screen porches, decks, and patios. The Forest Campground is submitting a conditional use permit with the request to establish an allowable size of a shed up to 120 square feet and up to 288 square feet for decks, patios, and screen porches. With this conditional use permit, the Forest would work with Burnett County Land Services to notify seasonal campers to back pay permit fees for permits that were not appropriately applied for originally. The Forest Campground would support a requirement to bring any pre-existing structure into alignment with the requested conditional use permit when future structure changes are made. Thus, in effect, the Forest Campground would allow existing structures to remain as is until a structural improvement is needed, at which time the campers would be required to modify structures to be compliant with the requested conditional use permit if approved. Just a few additional notes. In regards to the structures that are not meeting setbacks, we were waiting for a surveyed site map before addressing this. Preliminary map was completed at the end of February, and we will now take care of these issues. And in addition, just number-wise, if approved, all sheds would be in compliance, and there would be approximately 15 decks that would be out of compliance. And so those 15, if any structure change is made to them, they would have to be made to be compliant with this CUP.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions or any more explanation on the application? Mr. Robb.
So this is really just to kind of grandfather in temporarily the properties that were, or the buildings that were done without permits and oversized.
Well, he's bringing those into compliance, some of the ones that were oversized, and then for new decks and sheds that go in the new, or that come into here, they would meet these standards as well. And then he's got 15 or so that he said that are over these limits. Now, I guess we can talk about that either now or whatever. The town of Oakland said they wanted all of those items brought into compliance by May 1st, 2024. So that was what the town of Oakland recommends. Instead of just leaving them there for until they're replaced, they wanted a sunset date on getting those in compliance.
Dr. Conroy, I agree with that recommendation in the staff report in the town of Oakland as well, that a date certain needs to be set. That still gives a while for it to happen. But I think leaving it open-ended is not a good idea, in my opinion.
Any other comments or clarifications? If not, I'll open the public hearing. Patrick Hansen, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Hansen. I'm at 11465 North Shore Drive, Francisburg, Wisconsin. I'm also chair of Preserve Burnett County. Thank you for your time this morning, and thank you to Mr. Jansen and his business partner for this application and providing information to the public. I toured the DeForest property in 2019 with Mr. Jansen and others, And the explanation at the time, the description at the time of what they were doing was that they were bringing the property into compliance with Burnett County Code, and that they were going to be very proactive in working with the town of Oakland and with the county on doing that. Subsequently, in CUP 19-21, there were two conditions that were placed, and Mr. Jansen has referenced one of them, a portion of it saying that they needed to apply for a new CUP if they wanted to grandfather existing structures in. But that same condition, which he didn't cite, also says, and I quote, existing campers, decks, screen porches, sheds, patios, etc., shall be brought into compliance with all requirements by May 1st, 2021, unquote. And we are here at May 4th. So they have not complied with that condition of their CUP 19-21. Condition number 5 of that CUP said, and again I quote, land use permits to be obtained for all items before construction relocation. This includes all decks, patios, sheds, screen porches, etc., as required in campgrounds, unquote. My understanding is that between 2019 and today, they or their tenants have built additional structures, new decks, patios, and screen porches that are already in excess of the 288 square feet that they're requesting in today's conditional use permit application. And so I want to believe the representations that were made 2 years ago, that this is a new owner that is going to do things by the book and comply with county code, comply with their CUPs. But we just see that that's already not the case. As Mr. Jansen mentioned, Burnett County Code stipulates that decks should be no more than 200 square feet and sheds should be no more than 100. And references in Burnett County Code, that references section 22-19, which is floodplain rules, which say, and I quote, uncontrolled development and use of the floodplains, rivers, and water bodies of Burnett County would impair the public health, safety, convenience, general welfare, and tax base, unquote. So while the requirements for decks, patios, sheds, and accessory structures in campgrounds may seem arbitrary, you know, what's 200 square feet versus 201 versus 300, they are in preservation of the public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare and tax base of Burnett County. So I don't know how to solve this, but we have a problem, and I would like it to be.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments? If you wish to read the notice from Oakland Township.
I can if you want me to.
Please.
So here's the email that I received on April 27th. Jason, at the regular monthly meeting of the Oakland Town Board on Thursday, April 22nd, 2021, the board voted to recommend approval of the captioned CUP application for Forest Campground. Attached for your review and information is a copy of the checklist compiled by the Town of Oakland Land Use Planning Committee in response to the CUP application received by the township. It should be noted that the motion to approve includes a stipulation that the campground's mobile manufactured home park license for the Town of Oakland may be rescinded if all conditions of the county CUP are not met, specifically that all accessory units will be brought into compliance with the CUP within 3 years, May 1st, 2024. If you would share this information with the members of the Burnett County Land Use Information prior to the May meeting, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Cheryl Anderson, Town Clerk, Town of Oakland.
Thank you, Jason. Since there are no other public comments, I'll close the public hearing at this time. Comments from the committee? Mr. Rob.
In looking at the conditions, that if we do consider approval, condition 5, I find confusing. Land use permits to be obtained for all items before construction/relocation. So it's only when they're going to build one, or when they come, at the time that they're relocating, they'll have to get a permit. They don't have to get permits for the ones that are there now.
No, they need to get permits for the ones that were there now. That was one of the stipulations under CUP 1921, I believe, is that all items get permits that were already out there. This is,
Is that covered by item 4 then? Existing campers, decks, blah, blah, blah?
yep,
Shall be brought into compliance, that means they have to get.
yep. And then item 5 is really just to clarify, because I think there's been some confusion in the past that, oh, we didn't know we needed permits, or we didn't. I'm just trying to make it more clear that you need permits before you build it or move it.
And Supervisor Conroy, I'm not making excuses on behalf of the forest, but there was a lot to do out there, and the mapping was part of it that had to be done too, to clarify what had to be done. And I think maybe trying to get it done by this May 1st was a little fast. We could look at whether 2024 is a little too much time. That's something to be debated, but I'm not viewing this as a real serious violation, as long as the intent is to get it done and they're working on it. It's generally, you see compliance is the first main issue. And I think it's still can be considered ongoing.
Supervisor Pearson, what's the length of time they've got, once they obtain a permit, how long do they have to do a project?
Well, a land use permit's good for 1 year.
So if we were to say, you gotta get all these permits in order ASAP, then, along with, that almost sets the time stamp of 1 year rather than till May 1st, 2024.
Yes. The lawyers could probably argue what does ASAP mean, so that's where not having a date is.
Right, but I mean, we're implying that they need permits.
Yep.
So if they've got violations, I would think the permits would be in order ASAP, because that's a problem. And then that starts a time clock of 1 year to get the corrections made. So again, in order to justify a time frame, I think it should be in line with the permit process, and they should be getting permits for violations ASAP. And then, then we can watch and make sure it gets done.
I don't think that we have to be a policing.
Well, we either got to be a police or we got to just not have any rules.
Yes. I mean,
We either got to be a police or we don't want to have any rules. I mean,
well, I agree, but I mean, maybe you can hold them off until some of these things get done.
well, they got to get a permit to do them. I mean, whatever has to be done has to have a permit, right?
Yeah, I think though, like, with that 2024 date we're talking about is if somebody has a deck that's 400 square feet out there, this would give, that 2024 date would give them 3 years before they had to bring it down to this 288 size if that's what's approved. So that date is, I guess, giving the people that are oversized a little more time to reduce their sizes.
What effect does the additional time have? I mean, it wouldn't take more than a couple of days to fix it.
No, it wouldn't take more than a couple of days to fix it. It's probably just the people that want to get as much use out of it as they can before they have to modify it, I suppose.
Supervisor Conroy, and it also, when you talk about policing these kinds of things, historically, these kinds of violations are usually corrected within a certain period of time, and then if you don't, that's when the enforcement action starts. But it isn't quite like chalking the tires on a parked car either, because staff has been overwhelmed by other things, and we've been down on staff numbers. So even having the bodies to go out there and check it has been an issue, right? But as we get back up to speed, that will improve too. But setting that aside, I think their main goal is not punishment, but it's compliance. You know what I mean?
And that's what I'm saying. The compliance would be started by.
Right, and I think
They got to get a permit.
getting permits for everything could be sooner, and getting things that are currently non-compliant into compliance can be a later date. That's still effective.
It's Supervisor, when a person applies for a permit, is that when they would have to then bring it into compliance?
So it depends on, like this, if we set the May 1st, 2024 date, that means they have to be completed by that date, if that's the date that we stick with. So they'd have to pull a permit at least a month or so ahead of that so they could get the work done.
Bring the structure into conformance.
Yes.
But they built this structure without a permit. If they got the permit now, just to say, okay, I've gotten a permit, would that trigger something where they would have to bring it into compliance?
Well, if a lot of these, what happens in campgrounds is most of these are built without permits. So a lot of them just need to apply for a permit. We would go out there, verify it's the correct size or not exceeding the size limit, then we'd issue the permit, then essentially they're done. Because a lot of these campgrounds, the stuff's already out there. But on a new site, if somebody moves their camper in and they want to build a deck, they're supposed to come in and get a permit before they build that deck on that site.
Supervisor Connor, I think that answered Mr. Ross' question. It may be that we would say, okay, we're issuing you a permit for the 288 square foot deck. Permit's good for a year. By the end of the life of the permit, you have to have this deck in compliance. In other words, you can buy the permit now and you can build that deck on the very last day of the year that it's valid for. So it wouldn't be a very big addition in thought process to say when the permit expires, it shall be in compliance. You know.
That's how a land use permit works, yeah. So you get a year to do it. It needs to be in compliance by the end of that year if I apply for a land use permit.
So if there was a requirement that everyone at least get permitted, they would have a year to get into compliance?
Correct.
Yeah.
Does that satisfy your question?
It would satisfy me that the time frame that is within our rules. I mean, if they got to get a permit to fix it, obviously, they said they're going to get permits to fix it. Then we give them until 2024 to do it. Well, the rule should be the year. I mean, a year, to me, would be sufficient time to correct existing problems, which appear to be minimal. And then from now on, just get a permit to do whatever they want to do with permission to exceed the standards set by our conditional use of 100 feet and 120 feet. So I mean, everything falls in line. It's just that the timetable is maybe more appropriate for you. I mean, you're probably not going to get out there in a year and check it. I would agree that might not happen. But at least you've got some standard of authority rather than have to go by, you have to dig up minutes from one of our meetings and say, oh, I guess you got 3 years instead of 1. I don't think you've got time for that either.
No, I don't. I mean, the more standard we keep everything, obviously, the more streamlined we can operate in our office.
Supervisor Connor, I'll throw out a hypothetical quickly. Let's just say we modify that all permits for structures that need them shall be issued by September 1st, let's say. Then they would have all next summer to get it done, or they would expire. It would be a date certain to get the permit and a date certain on the permit itself when it had to be in compliance.
And that would better satisfy my question. Otherwise, the way this is written, you don't need to get a permit until 2024.
I see the point. I agree that the 2024 something we should discuss when we got to that point. So I just threw that out. That's just a suggestion.
But again, I would say get a permit within a short period of time and then follow the permit.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Were any of these had permits before, Jason, or no?
Oh, well, my staff report lists all the permits that are in the entire campground area, and we've got, 6 out of 100 and some sites that have permits.
That had permits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was just built without a permit.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you guys are wanting to change the date, I guess my thought would be item 4 in the staff conditions there. Existing campers, decks, screen porches, sheds, patios, et cetera, shall be brought into compliance with all requirements by, that's, I guess, where you'd want to put a date in there of when you would want that land use permit to expire. So if you wanted it to be September 1st, 2022, yes, that's the date Craig kind of mentioned. That would then say that's the end date. You know, you need to start getting your permits now, but that's the end date when everything has to be in compliance physically on the site to the right size.
This is Supervisor Ross. So we're talking about how many sites are out there?
It's 135.
So we're talking about quite a few permits that will be submitted. How does that impact your department?
Well, it's more workload, but the good thing is, you know, we usually go out there in batches. So, I mean, you know, we'll take 10 or 20 of them out there and go out there at the site at one time. So they're a little bit more efficient when you can get them all done in one site visit instead of just randomly driving all over the place. So, plus now we're getting fully ramped up to staff here in another couple weeks. So I think that will help too. And our permitting has been crazy so far this spring. I mean, maybe it'll lighten up. I don't know if there's enough supply and contractors available for all the work that's being permitted. So maybe things will slow down this summer. I don't know, but that's kind of a hope.
A lot of pent-up demand to pound nails.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would like someone other than me to read the recommendation. I have a low blood sugar this morning. Trouble. My eyesight. I don't know, you want Jason to read them?
Sure. Jason's got a good voice and he's handing to a microphone.
So here's the 8 conditions that were recommended by staff. Item 1, a complete campground map needs to be completed for the entire parcel, including existing sites, and filed with the Land Services Department, signed by a licensed architect, engineer, or surveyor, which shows the campground layout, location of all sites, roads, property lines, setbacks, structures, water supplies, private waste disposal systems, recreation areas, any other information the Land Use and Information Committee shall be necessary by October 2022, as required with CUP 1921. Any proposed changes in the approved campgrounds will be presented to the Land Service Department for approval. No implementation of the proposed changes shall take place until written approval is received from the Land Service Department. Item 2, camping units shall meet Wisconsin camping unit requirements. Item 3, sanitary system to be serviced and reported to the county by 6/1/2021. Item 4, existing campers, decks, screen porches, sheds, patios, etc. shall be brought into compliance with all requirements by May 1st, 2024. 5,
I want to change that, right?
We can amend it after you.
Okay.
Number 5, land use permits to be obtained for all items before construction relocation. This includes all decks, patios, sheds, screen porches, etc. as required in campgrounds. 6, no additional docking facilities are allowed on the Yellow River, Danbury Flows as required in CUP 1921. Screening as required in CUP 1921 still applies. Item 8, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity.
Great. Thank you, Jason. You wish to make an amendment?
Yes, Supervisor Conroy, I will seek an amendment on item number 4, and we'll use the date for compliance to be September 1st, 2022, which will give all of next summer if things completed.
I agree with that. Any second on that? Pearson, second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Conroy, second by Mr. Pearson. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
You agree with all the other conditions? Is there a motion to approve this conditional use permit?
I make a motion to approve the conditional use permit with all the conditions listed 1 through 8, including the amendment on item 4, that all of the work be completed by September of 2022.
Motion by Mr. Pearson, is there a second?
I'll second. Okay.
Second by Mr. Patton.
I'll second that motion.
By September 1st. September 1 is 2022, yes.
Now, roll call vote. Mr. Pearson.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg.
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
You might.
Might be on another phone. Mr. Ah.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Conditional use permit CUP 2107 has been approved. Next, we have conditional use permit 21-08, Chelmo, 60-unit campground. Is Mr. Wakefield, is it applicant?
Mr. Wakefield.
Hello.
First,
Hello.
James.
Hello.
Wakefield.
Hello, this is James Wakefield. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. And
I live at 7130 South Devil's Lake Drive, directly below the Chelmo property, below his farm there. And I have a problem with runoff from his property coming down, overfilling his ditch.
Hold on. That's what I asked, because I didn't think he was an applicant.
Yeah, he signed up incorrect.
I'll call you in a little bit after I open the public hearing, Mr. Wakefield. Next, we have Dan Chelmo.
Hello.
Hello, can you explain your application, please?
Yes, I'm here because I was invited from a meeting last February. Asked me to come back because there have been quite a few changes. The application is for 60 RV units located 300 feet and screened from view from nearby homes. This park is for registered guests. No day pass is permitted. There's 7 components to this plan. Includes a private restricted waterfront park limited to wristband access only of 25 persons. Supervision of all under 18. The waterfront is 75 from the ordinary watermark by 150 for the width of the waterfront. It includes gazebos, swimming pier, fishing pier, boating pier for non-motorized boats only. No carry-in boats, no boat launch, a maximum of 4 paddle boats. Boathouse access 75 feet from the ordinary harbor mark with lakeshore erosion protection, chain link security fence at the lot lines with waterfront neighbors. Item 2, the second component is 1.5 acre private outdoor day use picnic area and playground with gazebos, gas grill, picnic tables, benches, limited playground equipment. 3 is the RV sites consisting of streets, RV parking pads, picnic tables, manufactured and vegetative screens, water, septic, electric, fire protection, fire pits, security lighting. Item 4 is outdoor recreation facilities, including playground, swimming pool, yard games, miniature golf, and comfort stations. 5, a nature park, including environmental features and walking trails. 6, a visitor center, including guest services, registration, meeting room, and exhibits. Item 7 is the sanitary facilities. Some of those are mixed within the park. There will be no restaurant or retail store. Regarding the discussions past about an environmental impact statement, or the impact on the environment, I'm wondering, Jason, did you get my flash drive?
Yes, I have your flash drive.
Would you go to design, item 3, Brian Box? And I'll let you look at that while I read his letter.
Hold on here. Let me get it up on my screen.
Okay. Okay. Item 2, design team, to item 3, Brian Box. This is his resume, his background, and his authority as an engineer.
Yeah, I have it up on the screen.
I'm going to read the most critical part of his letter. Currently, in the state of Wisconsin, the only thing that would trigger a need for an environmental impact statement on the state level is a new metallic mine. In my opinion, that requiring an EIS for your project is not appropriate, and request that Burnett County provide written text or an ordinance that gives them the ability to require an EIS. And our position is that the county, without a legal basis, asked for more information for this item that is not in your ordinance. And so this letter is a negative EIS report that it's not needed. The next item is a safety item. I would like to go to item 4, which is traffic. If you can put that one up on the screen for me. There's a couple of things to look at. This one, Jason. Item 4 for a visual is called traffic.
Yep. Which one? A?
Let's do A first, and then we'll do B.
Yeah, I have A up on the screen.
This is a view of County Highway A. The power pole, well, you see the speed sign here. And that's approaching a curve with a speed, recommended speed to safely maneuver that curve. If you look at the power pole on the left, that's the driveway to the Chelmo farm. And where the road disappears at the curve is the entrance to South Devil's Lake Drive. The county had a meter, a monitor installed between the farm driveway and South Devil's Lake Drive. If you would drive by the farmhouse, it's approximately straight out from the farmhouse. Now, Jason, if you would go to the second visual.
Yeah, I have that up.
Okay, this is a data sheet of the traffic for the weekend of Memorial Weekend in 2016. And the point we want to make here is that there's been concerns about safety on County Highway A. This was obtained from the Highway Commissioner. He provided that to my surveyor when we asked questions about safety. High Star is the company that established this equipment. 70% of the total vehicles were traveling in excess of the speed limit. Let me repeat that again. 70% of the vehicles were traveling faster than 55 miles an hour. 85% was 72 miles an hour. If you look at this first highlighted columns, it shows that 799 cars were traveling in excess of 70 miles an hour, and 1,456 were traveling in excess of 65 miles an hour. And the point of this, the safety deals with speed, not with the number of cars. These are all illegal drivers. They are exceeding the speed limit, and if one is measuring safety by what's legal and illegal, there were 2,244 cars on that weekend that were exceeding 65 miles an hour. In terms of the total traffic for that period of time, if you page down a little bit to the bottom of that first page, you'll see a red pen note, County Highway A on the weekend of Memorial Weekend in 2016, the total number of vehicles was 15,897. The problem is not the number of cars, it's the speed. And so I would challenge those who are concerned about the number of cars that the Chelmo project might add to this site. That's not the issue. That's not the issue at all. The other concern that people have pointed out is that the intersection of County Highway A and 35 is a dangerous intersection. And I challenge that completely. I spoke with the highway commissioner about those comments. And these are my words, not his, but show me the accidents. And he was very clear that that is a very safe intersection since the State Highway Department and the county added turn lanes for County Highway A for both northbound and southbound traffic, both entering and leaving Highway 35. I think it is disrespectful of our diligent, hardworking, and very dedicated County Highway Department to provide a safe and well-maintained highway system. There is further comments that because we have, or at least the opinion was, because we have so many cars on the highway, that Chelmo should not be permitted to add any more cars. The highway commissioner, in a letter to me, made it clear that within the site limits and distances and his the codes and the guidelines that he uses, he is dedicated to provide a driveway entrance, a safe driveway entrance for every applicant. Now, I read his comments to that Jason requested, and it appears to me from those that he's frustrated because every time there was a question about driveways, Chelmo went to him. He is not going to issue a driveway permit unless or until the county approves a conditional use permit. In other words, in terms of your county ordinance, a driveway permit is another permit that the conditional use applicant is entitled to have 9 months to obtain. And I can remember last month, there were discussions about the Yellow River campground, and it appeared from those discussions that Chelmo had to have the permit in hand the day of his hearing, and we do not agree with that. We believe that is a permit that Chelmo is allowed 9 months to obtain. And then can we back out of those, Jason, and go to what's called equivalency, would be item 12.
Okay.
Item 12 is equivalency.
Okay, I have that open.
Okay, this is a measure of water quality for a whole host of public facilities. And you can read them there on the left. There are apartments, assembly halls, go down to campgrounds, dining halls. All of these public facilities have a state code mandated equivalency. The right-hand column is the estimated wastewater flow, and I've highlighted bedroom. Why did I highlight bedroom? Because the equivalency of the campground is what I'm going to compare to the water quality equivalency of a 3-bedroom home. One bed is 100 gallon, a 3-bedroom home is 300 gallon, and then we move down to campground. Campgrounds, camp RVs are very, in terms of water quality, very environmentally sound. They have minimal water use, they have minimal facilities, they don't have a whole host of other water use facilities that homes do. So what does this mean in terms of my campground? This means that 60 campsites have a water quality equivalency of 6 homes. And if we draw a line between what is the town of Oakland and what is the town of Meehan, the town of Oakland, which is RR1, the number of RV sites is equal to 5 homes. In the town of Meehan, the equivalency is 1 home. And there's been a lot of discussion about we don't want, Chelmo can only have 1 home for 10 acres or whatever. This campsite, in terms of water quality equivalency, is 6 homes. 1 in Meehan and 5 in Oakland. Now, in Meehan, I have 60 acres. I could have 6 homes. In the town of Oakland, I have 17 acres. I could have 17 homes. Compare that to the waterfront on the south shore of Devil's Lake. There are 12 homes on a little more than 6 acres. This campground would be 6 homes, equivalent of 6 homes on 6 acres. The Devil's Lake site has approximately a half acre per home. The campground equivalency for water quality has 1 acre per home. So in terms of water quality, I believe the concerns are minimal. Someone had a comment that, well, there's going to be 12 septic systems. No, there aren't. There's going to be 6 septic systems. 1 system for each equivalent 3-bedroom home. The next thing we'd like to look at, Jason, is stormwater. If you can back out of that and go to, let's see, item 10.
Okay.
There have been item 10, and we'll do all 3 of these. Let's start with 10A.
I have 8 up.
This is the existing drainage patterns on the Chelmo farm. There, in the upper right corner, total of 5 miles of drainage ditches. They are all draining west away from Devil's Lake. The narrative at the bottom, Edwin began constructing a stormwater drainage system away from Devil's Lake in the early 1940s using a field plow. And then county grader. And then Daniel Chelmo became the operator in 2015 and began restoring the original drainage plan to move the water away from Devil's Lake. Well, Jason, if we can, let's back out of that and go to 10B. This, well, you'll have to rotate it, but this comes out of Heidi's plan. And the area in yellow is a stormwater runoff diversion. Now, the state of Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Department of Natural Resources for campgrounds require that all stormwater be contained or treated on site. And I accept those requirements. The contours of the hillside of the farm make this possible. In other words, the campground, the campsite will be on the backside of the hill overlooking the farm. And most of that diversion will be located adjacent to the access road. A very simple, basic plan. We take the water and we send it all to the west. Treat it in infiltration swales and so on. And we show here the distance to residences of that. So let's back out of that one and go to 10C, I'm sorry.
Okay, I have that one up.
This is the existing stormwater at the farm. Now, the point of this is that the circles that are there are rain gardens or infiltration basins that I constructed when I created those lots to keep stormwater from getting to Devil's Lake. The natural stormwater pond created by the ice shelf is a large black area. The point of this slide is that no stormwater from the farm has ever reached Devil's Lake. The next thing I'd like to look at is let's look at the waterfront. Those would be waterfront photos. Let's go to 11A first, which is actually the second one, I think, Jason. The existing stormwater system. This is the Devil's Lake waterfront, and it's a little larger scale. In 2010, I installed a underground stormwater system with storm sewer inlets that deliver to an infiltration basin. There are actually two systems at this point that no water from that waterfront, that lake lot, has ever reached Devil's Lake. And then we're proposing another infiltration basin to pull this corner back to a natural depressional infiltration area. This is existing. This has been here for 10, 11 years, 12 years. If we can, let's go to 11B, waterfront details. 11B. This is about this. Okay, thank you. This is about the same scale. It shows the waterfront piers. It shows the 35-foot buffer area of undisturbed, relatively undisturbed. It does not show the stone riprap or the lakeshore protection that's going to go along the waterfront. And then at 75 feet back, we'll have a chain link fence with controlled wristband access, maximum of 10 sites or 25 people. And then the neighbors' properties along the waterfront would be protected from access, so on, with a chain link fence. The back picnic area, about a 1.5 acre private park picnic area. Walking access from the park. The next one would be 11C. There's a concern here, Jason, and this is why we want to put up a fence and perhaps even apply for a variance from the. We want to apply for a variance from the Board of Adjustments to attach a mechanical screen to that product. This is a privy on the Wallace's Resort, located 10 feet from the lot line. Now, I contacted Jason Town because my concern is there a sanitary permit for this privy? And in what you sent me, Jason, there is no sanitary permit for this privy. Now, I understand that, as you stated, the cabins do not have water, but this is still a septic system. The second concern I have is that when I looked into a privy to put on some of my other property, the county ordinance says a 25-foot setback. So this is a concern to me, not only that it likely does not have a permit, but it's very close to my waterfront. Now, I don't know what kind of container is in this privy, if it's a sealed pit or if it's just earth, but it is an environmental concern. And I would hope that if there's a permit that we find it, or that we find out what kind of. But my point is, I need to screen that from my guests, or even if no matter what I do, it's very awkward and uncomfortable when guests at the Wallace Resort, it's just too close to the fence. Can we go to 11D? That's another photograph. This is
11D?
This is D, yeah.
Okay, got that up.
This is a Wallace parking lot. This photograph is adjacent and directly toward the lake from the privy. The Wallace Resort has a guest parking lot adjacent to my lot line. That is a feature that I desire to screen. Cars parked there, and they're facing directly on that 75-foot waterfront, and even to the 35-foot buffer area. 11F. On the Wallace side, on the Hamilton side, there is this rusty old corrugated metal steel solid barrier screen. I don't know if it meets the code or not. Those screens within 75 feet of the lake need to be see-through, but I desire to screen this with a mechanical screen attached to a chain link fence, just from the standpoint of aesthetics. The photo of 11E is similar, except it shows there's two of them there. Can we go to, I'm going to skip some of these and move on here, but can we go to let's see. Let's go to Chelmo Design Team. And we are going to look at Heidi Brigman. Right, it's number 4 under Chelmo Design Team.
Okay. I have that all.
This is a professional senior landscape architect who has designed this campground. And I could read through all these, but I'd like to just take a minute. She has tremendous credentials and experience. Army Corps of Engineer, Naval Housing, Detroit Lakes, Duluth Transportation Center, Port Authority. Tremendous resume, 20 years experience. The second page is a list of additional credentials that she has in work experience. And then, Jason, let's go to the plan map. That is not numbered, but it should be. It's on the bottom of my column. Campground Project Master. This is the plan that she prepared. It has a lot of detail to it. I hope that you were able to look through that. The plan calls for planting of 6,000 trees. The 6 acres that is actually the campsites and the screening is where that planting will take place. The goal is to have 200 trees per campsite in addition to the screening. These plantings will provide noise reduction and light reduction. And so let me back up just a little bit. There is this opinion, this view of Northwood's character. The Chelmo farm as it is today is not Northwood's character. There's no woods. My great-grandfather and my grandfather and my father cleared 35,000 trees to create this crop field. I want to put as much back with this project in this area as I can. Uphill from the waterfront, uphill from the lake properties, facing the west. They started out with oxen and then horses, and then a steel-wheeled Massey Ferguson, and then dynamite to clear 35,000 trees. This farm is not Northwood's character. 6,000 trees is a long-range goal. It's a 10-year goal. In the meantime, if you've been out to the site, you've seen the earth dike that was constructed. And in the short term, that's what would go around the east side of this campground and vegetated, and either trees planted on top of that or a chain link fence on top of that with mechanical screen. That earth dike is 7 feet high. It's easy to get another 4 feet. And that would screen, since that's on the high point of the crest of the hill, that would screen all the campers to the west. The farm, as being an open farm, is a wildlife desert. Monoculture. Yeah, you see deer there. You'll see some birds. There's very little nesting cover. There's very little wildlife habitat. It's all the same. This is a huge step to revegetate this area to screens and nesting for non-game species of birds and mammals. In terms of the environment, this is 12 acres out of 80-some acres to be converted back from what it used to be to what it should be. And I compare that to the waterfront. Again, I'm going to compare it to the 6 acres along the south shore of Devil's Lake, along South Devil's Lake Drive. That is also a wildlife desert. Yeah, there's some bird feeders, but as the shoreline vegetation is removed, there's no place for any wildlife along the lake that doesn't leave. And I contend that this project is more northwards when it's completed than the area along the lake. For example, what does somebody do when they buy a lot? They cut the trees. Then what do? Then they pour concrete. And then they remove the vegetation along the lake, which is the premier the premier habitat in the world. I contend this is a positive. I mentioned in terms of water quality. I mentioned in terms of stormwater control, and in terms of aesthetics and wildlife. Well, that concludes my major comments. If you have some questions, I'd be happy to answer them. No, wait, I do have a couple other things here. Excuse me. Regarding comments by, and I haven't seen them, by comments by the town of Meenan, the town of Oakland, and the village of Webster, our reply is this. Statute 66.1001, item 2M, effect of enactment of a comprehensive plan, consistency requirements. A, the enactment of a comprehensive plan by ordinance does not make the comprehensive plan by itself a regulation. B, a conditional use permit may be issued by a political subdivision, does not need to be consistent with the political subdivision's comprehensive plan. However, ordinance need to be consistent with a comprehensive plan. Ordinance, all the ordinances, I could list them all, but all the ordinances. The second part of this section on ordinance states that the county zoning ordinance must be consistent with the county's comprehensive plan, since neither the town of Meehan nor the town of Oakland have zoning. There is nothing to be consistent with. Maybe they're on the process to get there, but they are not there. And there is one major, in fact, in the town of Meehan, there's one major inconsistency in the town of Oakland plan. And that is, the plan is, that's more than a dream, it's a vision. And when you go to bed at night, you have this dream, you have this vision, and it's wonderful. And you wake up in the morning, and you realize that life is going on. The zoning on the farm does not fit a way to get to this comprehensive plan. And there is nothing in the comprehensive plan for the town of Oakland that provides a process to get from zoning back to the plan. In other words, there's some nicks and scratches between the two. I believe this plan for this campground addresses all the environmental concerns, even though I understand the town of Oakland doesn't meet their comprehensive plan. The park part of this, the playground and park and natural areas, is all consistent with the plan. The area that's not is the actual 60 sites. And we've demonstrated that they, from a water quality standpoint, are 10 times more efficient than a 3-bedroom home. Well, I'm going to stop with that, but thank you. If you have any questions, let me know. Are you still here, Jason? Did I lose you?
Yep, we're still here.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee?
I have none at this time. Maybe issues addressed later, though.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Repeat that, please.
Supervisor Conrad, I said no questions at this time, Dan, but stay on board, maybe later. I'd like to.
I'm having problems hearing what you're saying. It's.
I'll get the closest to a mic this time. No, expert. Never mind. Okay, Dan, what I had said was that I had no questions at this time, but I reserve the right to later.
I see. Okay.
No other questions or clarifications of the committee? If not, I'll open the public hearing portion of it. First on the public hearing, James Wakefield. Mr. Wakefield, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Sorry about the interruption, but go ahead.
Yes. I live at 7130 South Devil's Lake Drive, directly below Chelmo's farmland, below the hill. One of the properties that was sold by the Chelmo family back in 1968. At that point, they sold 8 lots. They did not sell the lots further to the west because they were too low and unsuitable for building. After Hazel and Ed died, Daniel inherited the property, filled and sold those lots at the west end. The new owners filled them much higher. They're now a hill down on that end. That lowland had been receiving the runoff from the farm and can no longer receive it. Now, my neighbors and I, who lived at the original lots that were sold in '68, end up with all the runoff, all the storm runoff from the farm. Anybody who's driven down here in the last 5 years can see the water laying in our yards after it rains. Of course, part of this is the high water level, but the storm runoff is really intense. Any sizable storm will overfill the drainage ditch at the bottom of the hill, migrate over the road, and end up into our yards back here, and causes a lot of issues for us. Getting into garages, one crawl space, a home down here has been flooded for the last 5 years. We've got some real issues. Now, I'm opposed to this cup because I believe that any hardened surface that will be created by roads, pads, roofs, vehicles on the hill is going to be that much more surface that cannot absorb any rainwater, and it will add to the storm runoff that's coming down the hill and causing us all the issues down here. That's the essence of my argument.
Thank you, Mr. Wheatfield. Next, we have Patrick Hansen. Patrick, you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
My name is Patrick Hansen, 11465 North Shore Drive in Grantsburg, Wisconsin. I am opposed to CUP 21-08, and I'm speaking on behalf of not just myself, but also concerned citizens of Bigwood Lake. I want to address something that Chelmo said very early in his presentation, which was that he was invited by this committee to reapply following the opposition to and denial of prior CUP 19-12. I think it's worth noting that that invitation was extended before Mr. Chelmo sued the county to try to force the court to issue CUP 19-12. And I don't know that we would consider that invitation still extended today in this moment. So the committee did deny CUP 19-12. Mr. Chelmo appealed that decision to the Burnett County Board of Adjustment. And then at a public hearing in June of 2020, the Board of Adjustment denied that appeal. CUP 19-12 is now the subject of a civil court proceeding with a hearing scheduled for August 11th, 2021. So just a couple months from now. So I don't think I see Attorney Grindell in the room today, but I think he should probably be here for the discussion of this CUP and for the decisions that come out of it. Because I think the committee and the public should not have to consider another CUP application from the same applicant pertaining to the same parcels while a court case is pending that could affect the status of the property. Mr. Chelmo's current application states, and I quote, the remainder of farmland to remain undeveloped, unquote, or apparently to be populated with thousands and thousands of trees. Yet he continues to pursue via parallel court action a permit that would grant him twice as many camping units, that's 120, as he is presently requesting in the current application. So I caution the committee not to take any claims from Mr. Chelmo about his willingness to constrain the scope and scale of his project. Don't take that seriously, whether it's supposedly in the interest of neighboring towns or immediate neighbors or the general public or the environment or otherwise. I just wouldn't take that seriously. I would also just like to point out that Mr. Chelmo cited an expert who said that an environmental impact study is not required for this project. And I would agree with that. This committee never requested an environmental impact study of Mr. Chelmo. They requested an environmental impact assessment, which is a very different form of requirement and document. And then I'll just close by pointing out that under Section 30-634, Section A, quote, in addition to the information required under Article 9 of this chapter for a land use permit, the County Land Use and Information Committee may require the applicant to submit other pertinent data and information necessary to properly evaluate the request, unquote. So there is in ordinance the authority of this committee to request anything like an environmental impact assessment or other information to support the applicant's materials. Thank you for your time. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Next, Don Hamilton. Don, are you on?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
You're a little scratchy, but go ahead.
How about now? Is that better?
Very good.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am opposed to Chelmo Cup 2108 because the campground is incompatible with the County, Webster, and Town of Oakland comprehensive plans based on the following substantial evidence. At this location, Chelmo Cup 2108 is incompatible because it conflicts with the stated purpose of the county's A2 zoning, which states it's intended for A2 is intended to primarily provide for the continuation of general farming and limited residential development, and that's not to exceed a dwelling density of 1 residence per 10 acres. Please consider a commercial high-density 60-site RV park as the complete and polar opposite of farming. The Webster, Meenan, and Oakland boards have all reviewed Cup 2108 for compatibility with their applicable comprehensive plans and ordinances as a new campground inside a shoreland district, on rural residential, on ag parcels, and within Webster's extraterritorial zoning authority. Webster found 2108 is incompatible with Webster Ordinance 298-18, which does not allow campgrounds as a conditional use in residential districts. Oakland found similar incompatibilities with this cup. It has with their comprehensive plan, which states that, quote, new or expanded campgrounds in or within the shoreland district or adjacent to ag lands are an undesired conditional use. All 3 voted unanimously to oppose Cup 2108. Like them, I found no evidence 2108's application can demonstrate any level of consistency or compatibility with the respective ordinances or comprehensive plans. Specifically, the Oakland plan in Chapter 8.8 lists campgrounds as an undesired use for ag parcels that are adjacent to rural residential or shoreland residential parcels, for RR1 parcels within 1,000 feet of the shoreland district, within shoreland residential parcels, no new or expanded second-tier or backlot development within 1,000 feet of the lakeshore district, providing a keyhole access point for multiple families or users. By forever eliminating productive ag lands, 2108 conflicts with the county's farmland preservation plan as adopted in Chapter 30 as Section 30-6. 2108's unusually high density and activity, its commercial visitor center, multiple restrooms, pool, shower buildings, trash and human waste dumping stations, and other impervious facilities to be constructed is inconsistent with over 110 years of uninterrupted farming and will flood Jim Wakefield and the rest of the neighbors. Finally, I concur with and fully support the multi-jurisdictional reviews performed by Oakland, Meenan, and Webster. Even the Devil's Lake Association Board voted unanimously to oppose this cup. Collectively, all agree 2108 should be disapproved. And even Mr. Chelmo accepts his cup doesn't meet the Oakland Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Please disapprove Cup 2108 based on its income.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Next, Sue Hamilton. Are you on, Sue?
I am.
Go ahead.
My name is Sue Hamilton, and I live at 7158 South Devil's Lake Drive. I am an adjoining property owner adjacent to Mr. Chelmo's proposed campground, and I'm asking you to please deny this cup. I know there are many obvious reasons why high-density, high-intensity commercial business created in these specific ag and RR1 parcels inside a shoreland district conflicts and contradicts with the desired uses in Oakland's comprehensive land use plan. I want you to consider some less obvious incompatibility problems this cup creates, and I hope you will consider the negative impacts this cup will create for my family and my home. Specifically, 2108 is incompatible with the Oakland Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and an example is an accessory shed conflict. Immediately after Mr. Chelmo acquired the farm, he developed and sold 3 of the remaining lake lots on South Devil's Lake Drive. As a condition of sale, Mr. Chelmo mandated 3 lots be deed restricted from building detached pole sheds, accessory sheds, or garages. At the time, he stated, quote, detached pole buildings become bunkhouses and will devalue his lake properties as well as the rest of the neighborhood on South Devil's Lake Drive. We all agreed to his deed restrictions, thus no campgrounds with accessory sheds or other detached decks or porches should be allowed or built on adjoining lands to 7150, 7154, and 7158 South Devil's Lake Drive, because CUP 2108 is incompatible with the deed restrictions Mr. Chelmo created for adjoining properties. And regarding the 10-foot high security conflict, Mr. Chelmo recognizes the inherent security, trespassing, and privacy problems this CUP creates by designing a campground that funnels hundreds of campers through a 150-foot single-family lake lot to access Devil's Lake to party, shower, use public bathrooms, swim, boat, or fish. There needs to be a security barrier, but they also needs to be a noise variable. And think about the unavoidable eyesore. A 10-foot security chain link fence surrounding 2 lot lines of my home will make my house and the entire neighborhood look like Chelmo's correctional facility versus lake homes in an open shoreland rural residential area. I'm asking you to please disapprove CUP 2108. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue. Next, we have Gary Keyboat. Gary, you on?
Yes. Yes, thank you. I'm Gary Keyboat, the Executive Director of Herzl Camp. My thoughts about the Chelmo Cup have not changed since the beginning of the conversation. I am 100% against. I'm concerned about the noise and light pollution after sunset so close to our property, something that we at Herzl Camp work very hard to minimize. As an owner of nearly 2,000 feet of shoreline, I am troubled by how Mr. Chelmo intends to use just the 100 feet of access for so many potential customers. We have kept perhaps 60% of our shoreline untouched and natural, maintaining the beauty of our Devil's Lake shoreline. Our boats get put in the lake early summer and removed early fall. Our boats do not travel from lake to lake carrying issues with them. But most importantly, I'm concerned about the safety and well-being of our campers. Having hundreds of people coming and going into the area on the lake frightens me. My staff knows the lake, we know the people on the lake, and we are trained each and every summer on boat safety. This, unfortunately, will not be the case for the applicant. I respectfully ask the board to reject this step. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, John Rochelle. Are you on, John?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is John Roach, and I'm a longtime caller, longtime listener, as they say in the radio business. Well, here we are again, gentlemen. Another month passes, another round of campground CUP proposals in Burnett County. It would be one thing if there was an actual need for the campgrounds in the county that will launch this county to the next tier of economic prosperity. The facts are Burnett County is ranked 3rd in 72 counties in Wisconsin in campground per capita and 11th in campgrounds per square mile. The fact of the matter is, 8 of the 8.5% sales tax you might be hanging your hat on is headed to Madison. The fact of the matter is, an additional campground will put stress on already stressed police and emergency services. The fact of the matter is, the town of Oakland, the town of Meenan, and the village of Webster are against this CUP. The property taxpayers who provide vital finances to the county, municipalities, and schools have spoken. You are the elected officials that are to represent the community, and we're calling for you to deny this CUP. There needs to be scrutiny in anything that comes across the committee's desk, but it's been stated that a new campground needs to be more heavily scrutinized. Irreversible damage will occur if this CUP is approved. We need to make sure this CUP doesn't jeopardize the health, safety, and welfare of the environment, wildlife, economic prosperity, and community. If everything is hearsay, then where is the environmental data illustrating this CUP won't cause negative effects on the water quality of septic runoff, wildlife, air, and noise quality? Where is the data to prove this CUP will be an economic benefit to the county and will create numerous jobs? The burden falls on the applicant to prove this, as they are the variable changing the current environment. Was this flash drive the information provided to the public prior to this meeting, as I have not seen anything provided for myself to view. The proposal conflicts with the 2030 comprehensive plan, and I will highlight a few. Use and site design are compatible with adjacent uses in terms of anesthetic, scale, hours of operation, traffic generation, lighting, noise, odor, dust, vibration, and other external impacts. Scale is an obvious one, as again, creating a high density of people that the land use wasn't intended for. The density that this cut brings clearly conflicts, and it will add 240 minimum people to the small area, and this area has the potential to expand and increase the density further. Lighting also creates a significant conflict due to the fact that lighting will need to be added to the site and change the lighting of the area significantly. Noise will be drastically changed to the high density of people to the low density residential. The very same thing can be said about odor that will change due to the commercial operation. And the other criteria with the comprehensive plan is does not diminish property values in the surrounding neighborhood. We have thrown many facts and figures your way, but let's take a common sense approach. If you committee members had to move and buy a new home in the county, but it was across the street or near a campground, what would you do? Would you pay asking price? Would you increase the asking price because you're excited to now reside by a high-density campground operation? Would you bid lower than you?
Thank you. Next, we have Tim Stoffel. Tim, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
All right. I got a cabin at 7154 South Devils Lake Drive. I'm opposed to this cup. It should be denied for numerous reasons. Again, Chelmo showed up the night before and sent a new flash drive of information, including maps I've seen 3 versions of. Additionally, he submitted a COP application in the spring of 2019 for a commercial campground in the same location. He was requested to do a number of items, and he's never completed any of them. Yet here we are again, asking the committee to approve another CUP and pretending the prior CUP and requested items never existed. Should be denied for this failure to act upon these items. Under Chapter 30, the community needs to consider the effect of the health, welfare, safety, and economic prosperity of the county and the immediate area. This CUP has numerous negative impacts to all these. From an economic prosperity standpoint, the towns of Meenan, Oakland, and Webster will all be negatively impacted by this high-density commercial operation. Based upon a study performed last spring by Solem and Associates, a professional, I'll repeat that, professional appraisal firm based in Spooner, it was identified with substantial evidence that the closer proximity to residential lake properties to high-density campgrounds has a negative impact on market value of almost 14%, with a higher average near Devil's Lake Campground of over negative 20%, notwithstanding adding another campground, which will just support that. This means that the real estate tax base on many of the properties around Devil's Lake, which is over $50 million, should be reduced if this CUP is approved. The tax collections that these towns can't afford to lose should be reduced as a tax basis declines. Jason has a copy of this study if you want to see it. And keep in mind, it was performed by a professional appraiser. It should not be dismissed or ignored. Another thing, under the current updated Oakland Comprehensive Plan, this CUP fails to meet the basic requirements and should be denied for this simple purpose. The plan states that no new campgrounds should be allowed on agricultural parcels adjacent to a rural residential or shoreline residential parcel. See page 83 for a reference. Continued on, page 84 to 86. States no new campgrounds should be allowed in rural residential or shoreline residential areas within 1,000 feet of the shoreline district. Given that the shoreline district is 1,000 feet deep, no new campgrounds should be built within 2,000 feet of the ordinary high water mark of Devil's Lake. The proposed campground is at ground zero, not set back 2,000 feet. Clearly, this CUP does not meet the current Oakland Comprehensive Plan, much less allowing the keyhole aspect that he's trying to push 60 more homes through a standard 150-foot lot. The towns of Meenan, Oakland, as well as the village of Webster, all unanimously oppose this CUP. Please respect the rights and decisions of these communities that are directly impacted. The population makes up almost.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we have Roz Catapano. Roz, are you on?
Yes. Hello?
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rose Catapano. I own a cabin on 7154 South Devil's Lake Drive. I'm opposed I'm opposed to CUP 2108. This CUP negatively impacts the surrounding properties. There are compatibility problems with our septic easement, as well as illegal placement of 3 chain link fences. The primary access for the proposed campground is directly over land deeded for us to use as a septic easement for the homes at 7150 and 7154 South Devil's Lake Drive. This campground road is the primary access for over 50% of the RV sites and 100% lake access for the campers, several showers, trash collection sites, and RV dumping stations. If we ever need to utilize our deeded septic easement, it would significantly disrupt the campground business. It would greatly impact our general welfare by creating significant obstacles to access to our deeded septic easement. This application includes 2 10-foot high chain link fences along both neighboring waterfront properties. It also has another chain link fence spanning the width of the lake lot to control wristband access to the waterfront. Per Burnett County Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 45, Article 10, Section 45-191, states that an open fence must be set back 75 feet from the ordinary high water mark. How can a security fence be deemed security if it does not go all the way to the water? Having 2 10-foot high chain link fence security fences is an eyesore to the adjoining neighbors and is incompatible with shoreland and rural residential areas. As an adjacent property owner, I stand with the town of Oakland, Meenan, and the village of Webster in opposition of this CUP. Thank you, and please deny this CUP.
Thank you, Rose. Next, we have Cindy Neubauer.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. My name is Cindy Neubauer Stanky, and my family has had a cabin at 7126 South Devil's Lake Drive for 52 years, since 1969. We were one of the first few people who purchased a lot from Daniel's father. I want to thank you for your diligence in considering the merits and the demerits of this conditional use as well as any other conditional use permit. I'm opposed to this use for a 60-site, high-density, high-intensity commercial RV park and campground that's on A2 and RR1 zone parcels. And it borders residential lakeshore properties, and I believe it's incompatible and it should be denied. I've read through your Burnett County Code of Ordinances, and specifically in Chapter 30 regarding land use, zoning, and conditional use permitting. I'm concerned that the proposed usage will negatively impact the general welfare, health, safety, and economic prosperity of the residents on the lake and in the immediate area, and ultimately the county, which you are required to consider when granting CUPs per your county ordinance. This conditional use would provide direct lake access to a minimum of 60, more likely 120 to 240 and more persons, considering 2 to 4 occupants per site, by a 150-foot lot currently zoned RR1. This high-density direct lake access would have considerable effects on the health and safety of Devil's Lake. Please consider the impact to our land, our lake shore, and the lake with increased traffic on both the lake and the roads. Consider the increased usage of the already heavily used public landing, necessitating increased maintenance, and the increased possibility of the introduction of invasive species to the lake. Consider the increased boat traffic on Devil's Lake, which is already well used by the residents of the 170 tax-paying residences on the lake, as well as the occupants of the 148 seasonal RV trailer sites at the existing Devil's Lake Resort Campground. Consider the increased traffic on the roads and the impact to local services, and infrastructure not designed to handle the possibility of such an increase in emergency services, also paid for by the 170 residences on the lake, as well as the residents of Meehan and Oakland townships, the village of Webster, and Burnett County, but not paid for by the 148 seasonal RV trailer sites at the existing Devil's Lake campground. I'm concerned that the general welfare and environment of the adjacent residences on the lakeshore would be negatively.
Thank you. Next, we have Joy Dressel. Joy, are you on?
Yep. Good morning. This is Joy Dressel, resident of Danbury. First, I just want to applaud the town boards of Oakland and Meehan and the village of Webster for listening to their constituency and using the county's comprehensive plan as a guide in recommending the denial of the application for CUP 2108. Once again, Mr. Chelmo is proposing a high-density campground that is in direct conflict with the comprehensive plan and is a good example of inappropriate keyhole development in a residential area. Since it has already been well established that these permanent trailer parks disguised as campgrounds don't materially help the county with property tax revenue growth, I decided to do some research and look at the tourism side. This morning, I emailed a one-page PDF file to each of you where I did a comparison between Burnett and Washburn counties. If you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, I pulled data from Wisconsin government websites, and I was surprised by a number of factors. First, when comparing physical land area, water coverage, and acres of public lands, both counties are about the same. The size and demographics of the population are strikingly similar as well. So I thought it was interesting in looking at the tourism report, which shows that Burnett County lags Washburn County by about $5 million a year in tourism dollars. And there is one difference between the two counties that we know of. In the last 5 years, Burnett County has experienced a 60% increase in campsites, currently at 1,600 sites in 30 campgrounds. However, Washburn County has only 20 campgrounds with a total of less than 1,000 sites, with only 2 campgrounds having more than 100 sites. I think that is a pretty good indication that Burnett County is not gaining much from approving these high-density seasonal campgrounds, since the tourism revenue gap between the two counties has remained fairly constant in recent years. Allowing the continued placement of campers and park models, i.e. personal property, in the rural landscape of Burnett County is not economic development, and it does little for tourism. Providing profit-seeking speculators this opportunity is a great disservice for tax-paying property owners, some who experience property value reductions, as well as a disruption to the quiet and peaceful environment that they have invested in. And in the end, the taxpayers are forced to subsidize these resource-using commercial enterprises, which are not required to pay their fair share. Please support your local town governments and deny this CUP. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Next, we have Dennis. Dennis, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Do you hear me?
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Hellander, and my wife and I have owned a cabin at 7042 South Devil's Lake Drive since way back in 1992. So I think this is the third time that Mr. Chelmo has applied for a conditional use permit to build a campground on or near Devil's Lake. And once again, we're opposed to Chelmo's proposed campground that would be on the lake this time. At great risk of sounding like a broken record, you've heard many compelling arguments against the CUP already. A brief summary of that is, number one, the campground would not support the county's comprehensive land use plan to preserve our rural and Northwoods character. Number two, the current zoning in the proposed campground area is farming and limited residential development, and this campground would be high density and not in the spirit of existing zoning. Number three, the campground would have a negative effect on the environment, including noise, pollution, and habitat loss. Okay, in addition to those, We have a few other concerns and questions. Number one, in the beach access, you'd have 60 families sharing 150 feet of shoreline, or actually less because some of it's for boats. This density is much greater than anywhere else on the lake. Even if they wear wristbands and people take turns, it's going to be a lot of pressure on that little piece of beach. Number two, there are about 130 permanent homes and cabins on Devil's Lake. The campground would represent almost a 50% increase in families using the lake. That's a large increase. If the plan allows, number three, if the plan allows one parking space per camper, does it include space for a boat and a trailer? And where would additional off-site parking be? Number four, the campground would have a negative impact on the lake. It just would. The pressure on Devil's Lake would increase with more fishing, boating, skiing, wakeboarding, and whatever. It's already too busy on some weekends. Thank you for considering these questions, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Dennis. Next, we have Sally Wakefield. Are you on, Sally? What? Oh, okay. Next.
Yeah.
Oh, is this Sally? Christina Whitaker. Are you on, Christina?
Yes, good morning. Christina Whitaker at 26927 Riverwoods Trail, Village of Webster on the Yellow River. And I wanted to just extend a thank you to the board for your time today. I'm calling in today to express our concerns in opposition to Chelmo Cup 2108 to install a 60-unit campground accessible to Devil's Lake. As homeowners and taxpayers who have made considerable investment to our community, we have great concern for the disturbance that proposed campground would cause, from noise and light pollution from the campground to less privacy and even more congestion on the lake. We feel that owners' rights to quiet enjoyment of homes in that area on the lake as well would be in jeopardy. Another concern we have is the strain that bringing hundreds of summer residents in that immediate area, what it would have on our emergency services, roadways, traffic, etc. Also, high-density developments like this need to be planned for through zoning, not just allowed to pop up. It seems to us that turning agricultural or rural residential zoned parcels into commercial districts through a CUP is not the proper way to add something as permanent and devastating as an RV park. Injecting these commercial enterprises in a residential area is simply a bad idea. It cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach with these RV parks. I'm also very concerned as a real estate agent of 23 plus years in this area about a high-density campground in this rural residential zoned area would affect the property values of area homes. Data distinctly shows that homes adjacent and near RV parks have greatly diminished property values. I would estimate up to 25%. This is staggering, not to mention that it greatly impacts the ability of a homeowner to even sell their property. An adjacent RV park can make a property entirely unsaleable. In addition, the zoning for ag land, which is a good majority of this proposed campground, and current zoning limits that to development of 10-acre parcel with a single-family dwelling. It's difficult to understand how this proposed high-density CUP/commercial enterprise could trump current zoning that's in place without applying for the land to be rezoned, working through township and county guidelines. I recognize that there's a place and perhaps even a need for these RV parks in commercial districts or less populated areas of the county. Tourism is an important part of Burnett County's economy. However, we assert that allowing a high-density campground in this location is detrimental to many homeowners, reduces property values, abuses our natural and man-made resources, and puts a strain on public services, all without a substantial benefit to the county to offset those concerns. It is my sincerest hope today that this CUP is denied. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Christina. Next, we have Steve Pearson. Are you on, Steve?
I am. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Good morning to all of you. I'm Steve Pearson. I was the chair of the original Oakland Township Land Use Planning Committee back in 2002 and also a member of the committee that completed a recent update of that plan that was adopted on October 8th of 2020. Following the adoption of the updated plan, the Oakland Township Board established the Land Use Planning Committee, or LUPC, to advise the town board on land use decisions vis-a-vis the updated comprehensive land use plan. I am a member of that committee as well. On April 20th, after a site visit and a thorough review of the proposal, the Land Use Planning Committee voted 4-0 to recommend to the town board that they deny CUP 2108. You have a copy of the checklist used for that review process in your packet today. Using the LUPC's review of the proposed CUP and taking into consideration written opposition from Menon Township and the Village of Webster, along with intense opposition from adjoining property owners, the town board voted 3-0 to recommend denial of the CUP and sent that recommendation on to your committee. The LUPC, in reaching our decision, noted that the Oakland Township Comprehensive Land Use Plan lists new or expanded manufactured home parks or campgrounds within 1,000 feet of shoreland districts as an undesired land use within the township. Other factors in our consideration of this CUP included the siting of a commercial enterprise in a residential area, the incompatibility of this development with surrounding land uses, concerns about the aesthetics of a 10-foot high chain link fence between the development and adjoining property owners, already occurring runoff that is flooding neighboring properties along Devil's Lake, added pressure on limited EMS, fire, and police resources, which are funded by Oakland taxpayers, and the loss of agricultural land in the township. Taking all this into consideration, the Land Use Planning Committee of Oakland Township voted 4-0 to recommend against this CUP, and the town board concurred with our recommendation. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Andrea Murphy. Are you on, Andrea?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Andrea Murphy, formerly Andrea Yezik, and I am a full-time resident in the town of Oakland. I was raised and went to school in Burnett County and later returned here to raise my own children to give them the same rural upbringing close to extended family that I enjoyed. I am not a wealthy out-of-town lake homeowner. I'm opposed to this high-density campground development in our town. We already have enough campground options within the town of Oakland for people who wish to visit here. We also already have a noise ordinance enforcement issue within the town. There are several ongoing situations where the sheriff is unable to enforce the town's noise ordinance, and the town does not have a mechanism yet to do so. Adding a transient population of this size next to an established residential area will undoubtedly create additional noise complaints that will go unenforced, causing conflicts between neighbors that quiet hours and screening will not be able to mitigate. These conflicts do real harm to existing tax-paying residents who have invested here to find peace and quiet. That harm comes financially in terms of property value reduction and to mental health and general well-being. It does not take a study to come to these conclusions, only common sense. I hope the committee is able to foresee these potential conflicts and will consider this as they make their decision today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next, we have Steve Wolf. Are you on, Steve?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Steve White. My wife, Diana, and I live on Riverwoods Trail in Webster. We would like to join the many other Burnett County residents who feel it would be a serious mistake to approve construction of Mr. Chelmo's RV park. Last night, I drove around Devil's Lake to view the damage rising high water has done to the shoreline. It's not hard to imagine further damage from the increased boat traffic of a 60-unit campground. Nor is it hard to anticipate the strain another RV park would put on nearby roads and our local law enforcement. We also don't believe anyone has the right to inflict light and noise pollution on our rural neighbors. For all these reasons, we are asking the committee not to approve this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'll go back up on the list. Is Sally Wakefield on? Okay, that is all for the public comments. We did have received several letters from Town of Oakland, County Meeting, and the Village of Webster.
Correct.
And several emails that we all received, plus Jason had received more. Is there any comments before I close the public hearing portion? If not, I'll close the public hearing portion of this CUP, and I would like to take a 10-minute break. Come back here at 11:10, 11:15.
I couldn't wait.
How you doing? Thank you. Yeah, you can't focus this morning.
Yeah, you seem like you're gonna feel better now.
Burnett County, yeah, somebody's clear. Oh. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Ready?
Ready.
See, Supervisor Pearson. There's questions were raised about the validity of both MENA and Oakland's comprehensive plan and its, and its progress. The way I understand it, I think this is one of the first times, obviously, this committee has dealt with extraterritorial authority of a municipality, but Webster's zoning is intact. And Webster's zoning does have an impact on that mile area around the village. The next step that they would enter into if they were going to be more comprehensive or more appropriate is to create a joint review board, which would be these two townships and the village. And then their only job would be to develop what might be a different type of zoning in that area than the village already has. So I clearly believe that with Webster in opposition, that there would have to be, I would have to believe that Mr. Chelmo would have to try to get some agreement at least from them before I'd be able to proceed with any decision, because there's impacts on the village that we well might not be aware of and might be important to the growth of the village of Webster. And I'm not saying there is or isn't, but then that's not my business here right now. So that would be my comment on this deal. Supervisor Payton, based on Town of Meehan, of Oakland, Village of Webster, and the general public comments, I would like to make a motion to deny this COP 2108 based on all of the information that I've heard.
We have a motion by Supervisor Patton to deny the CUP 2108 because of letters received from the towns of Oakland, Neiman, and the Village of Webster, plus the overwhelming amount of opposition from people that live near or around the CUP. Is there a second?
Supervisor Conrad, I will second that, but I would also like to amend this motion slightly to add some substantial evidence type of things.
We have a motion and a second, and Mr. Conway would like to amend the motion.
By adding a couple more evidence. Another issue that has not been discussed much yet was the 150-foot waterfront access to Devil's Lake in this campground proposal, and that is the same amount of allocation of frontage as for a single one-family home. That is contrary, in my opinion, to the shoreline zoning ordinance. The maximum number of keyhole provisions we ever had in the ordinance when we had them was we would allow 4 back lots access to one code-compliant waterfront lot. That was in section 30-510. That provision would be 4 units. Let's even say the equivalent of 4 park model campers. That would be the most that you could use to access the lake. Mr. Chelmo's 60 campground unit access to the lake would be in violation of the ordinance, in my opinion, and I think there's substantial evidence that we could not permit this campground as proposed, even if we wanted to, because of that provision. By that I mean, if we were advocating it, we would have had to say, you have to take the waterfront access off. I would add that to the reasons that you said, in addition to the conflicts with the provisions and purposes of A2 and RR1, of the density and intensity of the use in the district, and the detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare and economic prosperity of the persons in the vicinity, adjoining property owners and nearby property owners.
And here, you've heard the amendment. Is there a second to it?
I second the amendment.
Second by Mr. Pearson.
Discussion.
Discussion, go ahead.
And sometimes I wish we'd have more discussion before we actually make motions. But a couple of things comments. Supervisor Conroy, you're talking about the waterfront, but I think he said he would restrict it to 25 people or something, which would be.
Supervisor Conroy, I admire his intentions. I don't know who or how that would ever be enforced. And I think
he was doing it with this.
I think you know, if you're going to put a velvet rope up there on the shoreline and let somebody in when somebody else leaves, it is, I think, an impractical idea. And also, I would cite the chain link fences and limited access that way as a potential harmful effect on the joiners. That's one of the reasons I argued harmful to the general welfare and economic prosperity of the joiners for that. So,
another comment is, when I toured the property, it seemed like I saw it as a good use of that. The campground would be up there, and it would seem to be really hidden from the rest of those properties, especially with the ability to add more on top of it. It seemed like it would be very attractive to people to come out there, and with that access to the lake, I thought it was a very good use of the property, plus with their own roads. So that's just my.
Again, Supervisor Conroy, as I said, to a certain extent, the process, had it been a process with some support, I think we'd find some acquiescence to some of those concerns. But the concerns that have been raised within the process we have to follow are all highly legitimate concerns, which are, I believe, supported by substantial evidence. So there would not, you could not say there would not be an effect. It's and that element of Act 67, you know, it says these decisions should be not based on speculation. But it's speculation on both sides to a certain extent. And it would be good or it would be bad. The applicant is speculating it would be good. The opposition and the adjoining property owners are speculating to some extent it would be bad. And I think the balance of the evidence, the substantial evidence, leans towards more harm than good from the proposal, in my opinion.
The letter from the highway commissioner, it's not a highway safety issue.
No, Supervisor Conroy, no, it's not, and it's a good access for another use. I'm fine with the access. I think it would be a dandy access for 4 backlots using the lake lot as access, for example. It would be about as much, arguably about as much taxable value improvement from a revenue point of view to the towns and county as the campground would provide. Because the campground does not assess the campers, and the improvements are about equal to one night cycle in taxable value. And you compare those things. So from that perspective, it's a zero-sum game between a conventional development or a campground.
For benefit, for financial benefit?
I'm just talking strictly tax revenue to the county, that kind of thing. Towns, you know, which benefits the towns and county more from strictly property tax and revenues? It's at best zero-sum game and arguably better than residential development.
So, what it seems to come down to very often is safety, welfare, cannot damage, be detrimental, etc. Even though there were expert testimony about the property values, I think we've shown that it's it's really hard to determine that as far as it being a detriment. So that's kind of unproven. The safety, I think we've shown that from the highway that it's not a safety issue. What was the other one? But there's usually three that are mentioned as far as that we have to try and
compatibility with the existing land use provisions.
I don't see a problem with that. But that's okay. That's my discussion.
Anyone else?
Supervisor Pearson, I think from a governmental standpoint, we can assume from the letter from the townships and the village that everybody in the township and the village agrees with them, because there's no other opposition. Only the person that's applying for the application is for it in this discussion we've had here. So we start adding up the numbers and what our responsibility is, and we find reasons through some of their zoning and some of their concerns to not allow this. I have no qualms about not allowing this to happen.
Butler?
No comments at this point.
I found a few flaws, and it doesn't make any difference if, one of them was, you noticed on the plat was a dump station. I don't think we'll allow dump stations on it.
Right, yeah.
So, I was there, another one was, for a person that has a boat trailer there, they have to have daily inspections by the DNR. Who's going to go out there and inspect it? And then I did notice there was one that they had a septic system in a wetland. And I'm not an expert on septics, but I don't know if you can put a septic system in a wetland. Can you, Craig?
Supervisor Conrad, no, a holding tank, maybe if it was no longer a wetland, if, removed from the wetland category to do that kind of work. There's setbacks from wetlands, but the only kind of private on-site wastewater system that can go in somewhere that doesn't have suitable soil is a home. A wetland certainly would not have suitable soil.
Then they also have the deeded septic easement. I don't know who supersedes that? Is the campground or is it easement?
It didn't, Supervisor Conrad, I didn't raise that because I don't have the language to look at, but obviously those lots were platted prior to the campground. And for the obvious reason that they're low in elevation and unsuitable soil, septic easements were granted for future septic higher up into the back where there is some suitable soil. No doubt about that. I think that's obvious. That would be a conflict that would be between the owners and the campground, but obviously unresolved. I think you could make an argument that this application is not complete in a number of ways, not because of access, but because of runoff and some of the concerns about water off the hills, rearranging the surface flow away from Devil's Lake and some of that stuff. But that is, I don't believe that rises to the level of something I want to add into the amendment.
No, I wouldn't say it shouldn't be, but, that was the first thing was when we seen the picture where he had the flow going to the west. The soil person, so I don't know.
Subsequent pictures showed it going to the east. We never saw that before today. That was my point.
What does how does an incomplete application affect our decision of capability?
Well, what would you classify as incomplete, I guess?
Well, that's the problem.
Well, okay, Supervisor Carter, I addressed that. I did not say that motion. I was adding incompleteness of the application as the right reason to deny. I just said I think you could make that argument, but I did not make that.
Any other comments? If not, we'll move on the amendment first. You have the amendment? You read the amendment?
Motion to amend special use permit of 2108 Chelmo due to substantial evidence of the 150-foot waterfront access to the same as a single-family home. Intensity, density, health, safety, general welfare, and economic prosperity for adjoining property owners.
Okay, we heard the amendment. Roll call vote, Mr. Pearson.
On the amendment?
On the amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg? Yeah. Mr. Anderson? He's not back yet. Mr. Robb?
No.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford? Yes. Amendment has been approved. Now on the main motion, made by Mr. Patton, I think it was seconded by Mr. Conroy, of denying the application CUP 21-08 for the 60-unit campground. Roll call vote, Mr. Pearson.
Yes, on the motion to deny.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg. Yeah. Mr. Anderson's not back yet. Mr. Ott.
No.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. The conditional use permit CUP 21-08 has been denied. Thank you. Next, we'll go on and discuss the Chapter 30 changes related to items from the large-scale livestock study ad hoc committee.
That won't take too long this time, because we're about where we were last month. I'm going to meet with Mr. Ferris as soon as we adjourn today to talk in a conference call with some land and water people in Minnesota. What we're looking at is the offset regulations Minnesota has for odor management, which are substantially more restrictive than Wisconsin, but they are what back in our 151 hearing that we attended in Spooner, and maybe Jason remembered, that was what Wisconsin was advocating, what Minnesota is doing now. We want to look at that. We can't adopt Minnesota regulations in Wisconsin, but what we may want to do is adopt the Wisconsin setbacks subject to their meeting the standard set for some of these higher concentrated, stronger, harder to manage emissions, which may allow us to have some say in how the odor issues are managed at the facility. In other words, we aren't going to be able to trump the state setbacks probably, but we want to be able to consider them, I think, when we review a permit. And secondly, we're still getting the final stuff from the National Weather Service on frost depth and penetration and duration that is helpful to our siting ordinance, number of days required. So we're going to be able, once we get some of this stuff ironed out, hopefully today, Jason and I will hunker down and write some language and bring to the committee pretty soon, I hope. So that's it for the section 30.
Thank you. Next, we have a campground work group update.
I get to do that too. We met and organized our group with a list of issues we wanted to discuss in our first meeting. Minutes are in the pack, in the folder. We then met, maybe the opposite, because it was possible to do. We met with the Center for Land Use Education at Stevens Point with a presentation on zoning conditional use permits in general, a little bit campground targeted, but not much. and looked at our ordinance, looked at some other ordinances, looked at some options. And I think that was a productive meeting. And Mr. Law and Mr. Payton would agree that we've learned some things that we need to look at. We're not bringing that as a recommendation yet, but I think we saw there are some things we can do better and work on our process a little bit for that 67 aspects as well. And we are going to be meeting and having a bit of an explanation of assessment with Bob Pardun this coming Friday. And then I think we're going to try to schedule our economic development person who just had hip surgery. We're giving him a week off following that and proceeding, I think, at a pretty good pace. We may be close to making it in 4 months. We'll see.
Yeah, one of the things that I took away from our meeting with the Center for Land Use
Education
was what is our definition of recreation? Because we've got R&R residential recreation properties, and just what does that mean?
It was a very good point to raise that you've never even mentioned before. And then there's a lot of strategies to look at what we should do with the ordinance. We're not ready to make a recommendation yet. I think we see there are things we can do differently for sure.
The question that was raised to me about RVs by somebody who could ask the question, thinking that they need to be removed for 4 months in the winter.
You mean within campgrounds?
Yeah.
Good question. That has not been in practice, but whatever it's worth, that's what Buffalo County says in their ordinance.
Apparently this person that I won't name would have reason to have some belief that should be the case.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what DATCAP has ever done, but we're going to have them in too, the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection, and regulates campgrounds, and that'll be discussed, no doubt, with our work group, because we have them scheduled for the 21st or 28th of May to get rich. Something. So yeah, it's all of these things are going to be talked about.
Because there's some amount of redundancy when we say we can't store campers any place unless they're covered up or hidden, but we can leave them on campgrounds. And that was what
Well, I thought that issue actually came up when we were approving, I think, an expansion of one of the campgrounds before because they were left there. And I think it was just that they had to be abandoned.
But they turned off the water.
They turn off the water, but that doesn't mean I can't go up there in the wintertime and do a snowmobile and use the camper.
The thing, I think, to clarify, this is not a county regulation as much as a state code. DATCAP 78, 178. What is it?
Oh, I think it's 78.
Yeah.
Or 72.
I'm trying to remember. But anyway, the point is, that's a question for the state, frankly, is they say no more occupancy than 8 months of the year. But they've allowed storage on the site because I'm not sure we'd want to try to all of a sudden figure out where to store all these things. Not to mention park bottles are not easily moved. So we want to be careful of kicking over that particular can. Right?
And it seemed like the state wasn't enforcing that. They were satisfied with if you just don't use it for 4 months.
Right.
But the reason for not using it seems a little obscure. Just
Yeah.
don't use it,
Yeah.
it's still there. So.
But that's the answer for your person is that.
This is something to be talked about further. Okay. About that.
I think it was up at, I can't think of the other one, not Oakbridge, but the other campground.
Rosenthal's.
Rosenthal's asked, well, how do you keep, well, we turn off the water, but doesn't mean that I can't go up there and use that camper, bring water with me and.
There's active development rope around it again.
And again, this question was about use so much as they thought that by the state rule that it had to be removed. It was just a question.
Yeah, the state does not, at least doesn't require that. from my inspections that have been out with the state people, they don't require them to be removed from a campground. Their main thing is they want to make sure that the axles and wheels and stuff were there, so that way if you had to remove it, then you could do it in a quick manner. You know, be off the lot or stored.
Any other questions from the committee for the subcommittee?
Well, then I agree with you, Mr. Craig, I think might be coming up.
Subgroup?
A study group.
Okay.
Whether we should consider just allowing the 3 years for RVs to exist on lots they own. When they get a sanitary permit, you could give them a permit to go for 3 years, and then they would come to this board for a conditional use after the 3-year period. We're pretty much approving them all, we're letting, we're considering putting whole 100-unit RV parks along the lake, so some poor person owns a lot, just make it a little easier for them to use it for 3 years.
Sounds like future agenda.
But, part of the ordinance.
It's not to use it, but we make them put it in a septic system.
I understand, but rather than come with the $300 or whatever for a conditional use permit, just if they get a sewer permit, Jason would have the right, if they ask, to give them a permit for 3 years to have an RV there until they build, rather than coming to this board.
I asked Jason a question before. I see the camper back on the lake, but they get a six-month permit. But they do have a septic system. They renew it every year.
Other thing to discuss down the road when we amend the ordinance.
That's as long as we're amending the ordinance, so that was something that worthwhile before then.
Not on today's agenda.
The thing I like about the 3-year one is because we pretty much tell them, if you ain't going to build, you're not going to get an extension on it. And that's the whole reason for having it is to try and get people to build on them.
Well, the same thought in mind, but rather than, there's only been 1 or 2 we denied,
Well, if they pay the $300, we know them. Any other questions for the study committee? If not, we'll move on. Land services, zoning, property information.
So those reports are in there, let's see, starting on page 122, I believe, of your packet. Staff reports are in there. Do you see what they've been working on? Budget reports are in there. Revenue permitting is up a lot, so you'll see we're almost, 80% up from last year at this time.
We're going to crack 300 sanitary permits at the pace of things.
Yep. Website statistics are in there. We almost hit 400 users on that April 26th. So I've never seen it hit 400 before. We had 378 users on April 26th.
Next week, you start thinking another staff.
Yes. Then
She's a recent graduate of Webster School, I believe.
yeah, she's a local girl. Yep. And then she's actually graduating from UW-Madison with a degree in engineering, so she's way overqualified. But we'll take it while we can.
I'm pretty sure we can manage to find things for her to do.
Sure we can. Yes. Yeah, you see all the permit numbers in there for the year so far. Yeah, if you have any questions.
$23 dwellings. 3 months, 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
You have now, or will be?
Will be, yep. Heidi's doing good. She started, January? She's catching on really fast.
Did you get her results back on her soil testing test
She
yet?
did not get her results back yet on her test.
Not everybody passes at the first try. It's a fairly tough test. Hopefully she will.
Future agenda items.
I have one question for future agenda. So we had a conditional use permit, that we approved, 2057 for Maxon. That was the one, the 2 miniature ponies in the town of Oakland. The town of Oakland has sent me some communication, requesting, let's see here, once again, they're having issues with barking dogs. Given that these were not the first concerns, since the caption CUP was approved, the board voted to request the Burnett County Land Use and Information Committee revoke the CUP. So do you want to have that on the agenda next month to discuss that conditional use permit?
Was that a conditional permit?
That they follow all local, county, state, federal regulations. That was one of the conditions.
So what regulation are they violating?
I believe they have a noise ordinance.
They were supposed to relocate the dogs to a different part of the properties and hopefully get them to quit barking.
Yep.
And it sounds like they're working on that, but haven't got it done yet.
Right.
I don't think it would hurt anything to discuss it, but I don't think I would put it on a public hearing for revocation yet.
Yeah, I don't think
you
so.
could discuss it.
Was that a requirement or a suggestion? Is that a condition?
It was a request from,
We basically,
I mean,
that there are.
moving the dogs, was that a condition? I can't remember.
They offered that as a solution, as part of the discussion of granting for the miniature horses. So so we took it at face value as we wanted them to follow the town of ordinance's ordinance and recommendation. That was a condition. So I think discussion is appropriate. I don't think we put it on for a hearing.
Yeah, I don't have the whole file with me, so I don't know what all the conditions specifically were for it, but I'll put that on as just a discussion item for next month then.
Then we can discuss whether we should be more.
Did the town say they had discussions with them about the situation? They just had complaints?
well, they must have, because she wrote a letter.
The applicant responded back about where they were at and hadn't been able to get it done yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, because I forwarded, so when I got this from the town of Oakland, I forwarded it on to the applicant or the owner of the property, and then she responded, and I think I emailed all you guys those items as well.
Well, if in our standard language, we say they have to follow all local rules and stuff, and they're not following the local rule, it would be up to the local ruler then to, the town then could say, well, you're done.
Well, we have to revoke, we were the one though that gave them the conditional use permit, so.
And it wasn't for the dogs, it was for the ponies, the horses. But the concept, if we felt someone was in arrears of a conditional use permit and we wanted to revoke it, we would have to go through the public hearing process to do that. I think it'd be premature to start that.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about it, and if we haven't heard good news by then we might want to think about that.
Do many towns even have a noise ordinance? Or a noise, would it be, is that an ordinance?
Mine doesn't.
Yeah, and I don't think most of them have a noise ordinance.
I don't know what towns have what ordinances.
Yeah, so they wouldn't, if they don't have a noise ordinance, they're not violating.
Well, just anecdotally, I've got near me, within hearing distance of my house, but still pretty far away, but people on the list behind me have been complaining about similar problem with barking hounds. Like when people walk, owners of the dogs not there during the day, people walk by, dog sees them, they howl for an hour. And we talked about that at the town of Jackson quite a bit, and obviously, if the town adopts such an ordinance, they're not going to get it enforced by the Burnett County Sheriff's Department.
No.
They have to enforce it. So the towns used to have constables that could but no longer do.
Well, if you write your own ordinance, don't you have to enforce it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the sheriff that enforces
So,
it.
you know, so what unfortunately might lead to is needing somebody to write a letter and threaten a nuisance lawsuit for the noise, right? Which is not a good way to run a railroad either, but that might be the remedy that they ultimately have to take. We were trying to convince the applicant to take care of their dogs with the standard that if you can't manage dogs, why do you think you can manage horses? Kind of, right? And if you can't do it, then you'll have to look at it. That's all.
So did you get your answer?
Yes, I will put it on for an agenda item next month.
Can you also talk to Mr. Miguel? How often do you have to keep your notes in that from public hearing? You know, we just got a request from Nate because Spokane wants all our notes from, that we had for the public hearing. That's what I told Nate when it was denied. I just erased in my iPad. I erased Spokane on there. Everything I had in there. I had one note. That's all I had.
I can tell you that I'll save my doodles from today just in case, but my iPad is at the point where it's either I've got to learn to start making files or I have to delete a whole bunch of stuff because I haven't deleted any of that stuff yet.
You don't even delete the emails you get?
I kept the ones that were alive yet, you know what I mean? When it was under appeal. I haven't deleted them because I'm just cautious about deleting stuff until it's actually over, you know? But I need to fix that because that's a bad idea. I keep getting a little pop-up, I've got this much capacity left in my in basket, you know? And I delete a lot of stuff every day that isn't important. I took the others for public hearings I've hung on to for a while, intending to delete when we were done with them, but, you know.
Well, I figured when we denied it, we were done with them.
I would agree, except for that, we got a couple today that aren't in the packet, you know, I don't know, that's a question, Jason, the stuff that comes in 11th hour like this, do you keep that in a file for the thing?
Yeah, so what I do is you guys get your packet about 5 days or whatever before the meeting. Anything that comes after that, I keep that information and then I put it all in a final packet that then gets rescanned and pushed out to the property files out online, so.
And there's no need to keep it like I've been doing, but I've been doing it only so that if somebody demanded my records, they have it. But it's really not necessary if you're the custodian of the records, and as long as you're saving them, it's part of the record of the hearing. So I'm reminded how we board in March when we got the email 15 minutes before we convened on questioning the propriety of the moratorium we were going to discuss. That's the same sort of thing. It's arguably okay to raise that issue, but it's not part of the county board packet or the land use committee packet. And if it wasn't preserved in the record, it may have affected why someone made a decision. You know, that's why I've always been a little reticent about just clearing everything when I get home today. You know.
And I think part of what, it's my understanding, that part of what raised the issue is people were watching and they thought they saw Craig reading from his notes, so they want to know what he's reading. Right. So rather than, my notes are 1 or 2 words, they thought he was reading some kind of prepared statement. And that was
not. I was reading from my iPad and reading from some jargon I put down and expounding from the hip.
And my notes are usually 1 or 2 words.
But don't show me that.
So
we can just delete all the emails we get.
Well, James is here, I think. James has everything backed up, you know, through email and stuff. So every email that you're getting that's coming through the county servers, that stuff's all backed up and copied no matter what.
How would I find it then?
Yeah, how would he find it?
Yeah.
He would do searches. That's no different than we have open record requests when they want to see every communication we've had over certain topics. he just goes in there and does searches for those keywords. So we have all of that stuff. Now, the only thing that if they send you an email directly to you, I would have a copy of that for the packet or for the file, just because I'm not included in that communication.
Well, I don't know which is which.
And that's something that I don't always check that. I presume to everybody, but I think occasionally, maybe any of us might get one direct just to us. That could happen. And if it affected our decision or we use language from it or something, it ought to be forwarded to you or whatever to make sure you keep it, right? Because if we don't keep it, and I don't know that it's a big deal. I mean, how electronic ability to comment on public hearings and whatnot electronically is so vastly higher volume than what we used to see when it was everybody coming in person, both on sheer volume and length and complexity. All of those things are another level.
I don't think it was about the communications going on. I think it was about personal notes.
Or
so, what are your personal notes? What are what are your personal notes?
Yeah, was there a document that was distributed?
People talk.
Yeah, this stuff is all recorded, and then it's broadcast on YouTube, or it lives, once it's on the internet, it lives forever. So
I don't have to say this anymore.
No.
Okay. Anything else that comes before this committee?
No, let me.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
I'm finally unmuted. I'll second.
Your third. What do we have for next month?
You've been unmuted for a long time.
The application deadline hasn't closed yet. It's first Friday of the month, but I think right now, there's like 3 of them, and to tell you the truth, I don't even know what all they are, because I haven't even looked at them yet. Yeah.
Now we can get the heavy lifting done, a little respite from that.
I'm going to have a couple of people that know that want to make sure that they have it, so they know other than anybody that was on the public hearing list, would they get a response saying there's levels that would be returned.
The only note I ever had about DOT statement on there that has 2 accidents within years is shut off the access. That's what question that. That was the only thing I had. So.